Mm.
Armah says on page 415, we know our liberation hinges on cultural unity.
Cultural unity.
And also interesting that you brought up Chancellor Williams, because in his introduction, he says, but for over a century now, a few Africans in different parts of the world have been pointing it out in the teeth of a still triumphant annihilationist orthodoxy. Antonin Firminin in Haiti, JMG James and Chancellor Williams in America, Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophile Obenga in Africa have done valuable pathfinding work in the new awakening of Africa's historical memory. So the thing I love about Ayi Kwei Armah, I probably have at least 50 books that just came from reading the bibliography in his books. He mentioned so much. I'm like, oh, I gotta go get that. Now I gotta go get that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to raise that. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, page 197, when he talks about the protected life, chapter 6. They kept repeating the African adults had no real plans for Africa's children. That generation of African children has been exposed to educational neglect in the past because European rulers thought it's rational to keep the population of Africans ignorant. That when African politicians took over from European administrators, they did not know how to handle education in Africa apart from maintaining and expanding facilities installed by Europeans. And yes, we see that. People wanting to go to schools like Holy Child, King's College, Methodist Boys High School. Unfortunately, my dad went there. So you see Mary Wood, which my mom went to. So you see all of these contradictions. You're free, but yet you're not free. There is, I was reading some speeches when this issue of Nigeria reverting to the old anthem happened. And it was the independence speech read by, what's his name? Alhaji Tafawa Balewa. At the last verse there, he said, we have discussed and we will continue to maintain this arrangement in the interest of our two peoples. So why are you getting independence in the first place?
You're not. You don't want it. You want your master's love. I mean, it's funny, Baba, you mentioned that. In fact, do you mind right there when you were reading on page 197?
Yeah.
Finishing that paragraph out, because he's making the point you're making, I think.
197. Okay.
Right there where you were. Right where you stopped.
Okay, listening, I keep thinking we found an extraordinarily expensive way to nurture failure. Meeting in luxury hotels to say over and over that yes, our society has huge problems, but no, we cannot solve them because we find it sweeter to resolve that they be solved.
Exactly. That's every conference I think all of us ever been to. You get the per diem, you get the people who, unlike Kathy, myself, and Negro colleges, somehow have bank accounts that the school pays for your travel and registration. Now I'm gonna out her because I don't know another working academic in the academy who comes out of her or his or their pocket more than Kathy does. I suspect she probably got some people with her now she didn't help pay to get to Ghana. That's what she does. But these people who write these magnificent books on African history and culture, who do all this work so they can go to these luxury hotels, get their registration, their lanyard, and sit up and talk about how Black people are not free and now they've gotten to the point now where they turn our misery into Black joy. So in the moment of being beat by the police, we did a little dance. And so in that little dance, we see the resistance of Black people. What the hell are you doing? My master paid me to come to this hotel. And as Armah says, we find it sweeter to resolve that they be solved than actually resolve. So in meeting, we put out a little document. Anyway, I said all that to say that Armah's, it's not even frustration. That shade you mentioned, Aya, that's his age. And that's why you say, don't get mad at me, take it up with Armah. The beautiful thing about this. Oh, Lord, that echo is there, isn't it? I pulled my microphone off and said, the beautiful thing about this is Armah is an age mate of Shoyinka. He's an age mate of a little younger than, of Chinua Achebe. This is what James Curry is writing about in Africa Writes Back. The rest of these Negroes went along. Armah would not go along. And so Armah is settling scores with his age mates. Just like we wouldn't get into between an argument between our grandmothers and their sisters. You can't have no, that's not your fight. Stay out that argument. You don't have a horse. Now, what we see academics do is they go back in time, and the elders whose arguments they like, they use them to beat up the other elders. This happens all the time among academics. So they misinterpret Marcus Garvey, or they go back and try to beat up somebody, Queen Mother. Why? Because you are on the side of the Negroes who quit. This is what Jim Wells used to call the rejected strain. When Harold Cruz wrote Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, for example, Cruz is arguing with John Henry Clark. He's arguing with John Killens. He's arguing with Paul Robeson and Lorraine Hansberry. He's arguing with people he was in the room with. But what Dr. Carruthers used to always say is that, there's a rejected strain of Black liberation people who say we can win. And that's the rejected strain because generation after generation of African people all over the continent, all over Africa and the diaspora, they train these Negro academics to beat up anybody Black who thinks we can be free. And then they will give them all the awards and all that. So I started to say that when you talk about at the beginning, as he mentions those Africans, George G.M. James, who taught in Arkansas, now University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas A&M College, his people were from Guyana. And of course, Sheikh Anta Diop, Senegal, Theophile Obenga, Congo. And just looking at those names and thinking about those names, the one African who comes out of the United States before, well, Furman, of course, Haitian, who we learned, Cat and I, and some of the others, because of Asa Hilliard, who kind of introduced Furman to us, and his stuff is not written in English, it's mostly French, although the big book, The Inequality of the Races, has been translated into English years ago, so you can get that. He's like a Sheikh Anta Diop figure, except he's in the 19th century, talking about the connections of African people. But Chancellor Williams, out of, I think, is it Bentonville, South Carolina. Again, South Carolina becomes a keystone for a great deal of this work, right? Because those Africans never stopped being Africans. And they were clear about it. Chancellor Williams, who comes to D.C., his house is still up in Northeast D.C. He built his house with his hands. Chancellor Williams, who lived almost to be 100 years old, with this big house, worked at Howard for years, was a protege, junior protege, and I know Deb is here, I think. Deb knows this story, heard better than I do. A junior protege of William Leo Hansberry at Howard, who was Chancellor Williams in many ways marginalized at Howard when he was teaching. He's in the student newspaper. You can go in the digital access to the Hilltop, the student newspaper at Howard University. Anybody can get it. If you go on Howard's website, go to the library system and look for the digital version of the Hilltop. You got him in there arguing with Howard students back in the 70s and 80s. They're saying, Chancellor Williams, these are Muslim students. They mad at Chancellor Williams because Chancellor Williams said the Arabs enslaved us too. And so the Black kids who are Muslims jump on Chancellor Williams